Well, for more on what the country faces next, economically and otherwise, I'm joined by Kajsa Boglind, Washington correspondent for Swedish National Radio. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
So let's start with where we are now. With no single party getting a majority, what can we expect in the coming weeks?
What will happen is that the Speaker of the Parliament will give the initiative to one of the party leaders. Traditionally, it is the leader for the biggest party, and that is our current Prime Minister, Stefan Löfven. He will probably get the first shot at trying to get some kind of a majority. But the thing is, he has to take a vote, and if he gets the majority against him, which is the most likely scenario, then everything is up in the air and the shot goes to someone else.
So as you look at the makeup of these election results, what were the biggest takeaways and surprises, you think?
I think it was quite expected that the big parties would go down. That's the trend that we see all over Europe, and that's the trend that we have seen in Sweden in the last elections. Actually, some of the pollsters said that Sweden Democrats would be even bigger, maybe the second biggest party before the election. Now they ended up third. They gained voters, but they didn't become the second biggest. So it's difficult to know.
So let's also take a look at this. This is the country's first general election since this big migration wave. So in the end, how big of an issue was immigration for voters?
It was a big issue for the voters, but it wasn't the only issue, of course. Sweden Democrats made it a huge issue, but there were also a lot of Swedes that really thought that we have to have a discussion about how to handle this. And that doesn't mean that everybody wants the Swedish Democrats to take those decisions. They ended up with 17%, which is a lot more than last election. But also the other parties has been more restrictive about immigration since the big wave.
So what were some of the other determining factors in the way that Swedes voted this year?
I think climate was one of the issues. I think because we had an extraordinarily hot summer in Sweden, which is very nice, but it's also kind of worrying. It was also economy, healthcare. We have longer waiting lists than before for planned surgeries and things like that. And that is something that is upsetting people in Sweden. So that was also a key issue.
Now, while there are some arguments about, as we saw from the Sweden Democrats, about being against immigration, we also saw that some economists said that the rise in immigrants and refugees has helped offset some of the concerns about Sweden's aging population. What are your thoughts on that?
Can you repeat the question?
Sure. So in terms of looking at the impact that migrants have had in Sweden, some economists have said it's actually helped the economy because Sweden has an aging population and this new influx is offsetting that with the economic gains that they bring. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think Sweden is geographically quite a big country, but we have a small population and we would need more people. But the thing is, for example, to take care of our aging population. But the thing is, the new Swedes have to find jobs, and that's the concern. And I think that integration is something that all parties look upon as an important challenge from now on.
Now, for people who may not be familiar, what are the biggest drivers in Sweden's economy?
We have a lot of competitive big companies, Volvo, IKEA, and that do very well internationally. We have a lot of export, so I think that's some of the strong points that we have.
And so given that we now know there's going to be this prolonged period of trying to figure out the political situation, what sort of impact might that have on the economy?
I'm not sure. It's definitely not good if the process keeps taking too much time. I mean, we don't know if it's going to take days or weeks or months, and I just assume that might have a bad impact on the economy.
All right, thank you so much for your insights. Kajsa Boglind there, Washington correspondent for Swedish National Radio.